All right. Thank you. And Terry,
Yes.
sans serif.
So enjoy Dan because he won't be back next year.
I'm with you. I mean, it's like sans serif. It's embarrassing. So,
I need better friends.
no, I am really excited to be back. This time last year was emotional for me because my wife and I had spent a year talking about what we're going to do next in our lives. We finally made the decision and had a couple months to transition. And I left Disney, and I've been a year now out and adventuring the world. And I'll tell you, what Terry said and what Karen said, all this stuff is like, a year ago, I would have said, I'm not sure what you're talking about. And now it makes absolute sense to me, all these things. And just figuring out the path, taking risks, jumping off and not knowing where you're going. Now, to be fair, it was a calculated risk. We got our youngest son. We're now at an 80% chance he's going to graduate from high school next week. He loves going right down the wire, this kid. Like he won't do the exams or the quizzes, but he got up at 4:30 to do the senior prank. So this is who the kid is. So we'll see. And if he graduates, he's going to go to the University of Denver in the fall, and that's going to be a whole other adventure. So I told my wife, I said, we want him to take a gap year. And I said, maybe he'll just decide on his own he's going to take a gap year. Because she's like, I don't even know if he's going to be able to feed himself. I'm like, look, I figured it out when I left. So we'll see. I think he's going to be fine. But, Disney career for 26 years. We started talking about the what ifs, what are the possibilities. And the first conversation we have, I said, you're crazy. There's no way I'm leaving. No one leaves Disney. You spend till you retire, and then you go wear the black shoes and the Velcro waist, I guess. And so my wife, she's very persuasive. And so over a year of she just basically wore me down. I'm like, fine, I'll leave. Just stop talking about it. And we've had a really fun year. It's been terrifying and scary, and creating content is a heck of a lot of work. That's what I discovered. I'll tell you more about that. And I think I told you this story last year, but I'll repeat this because I think this was incredible karma. The day I left Disney, I'd given my notice a couple months earlier and said, all right, let's figure out who the next person's going to be coming in. I want to spend time with them and say goodbye to everybody. And the day I left, I was wandering around. We call it MO7 at the Magic Kingdom. It's above Starbucks. It's a whole second floor, Main Street on the right-hand side. That's where all our offices are. And the guy, Jason Kirk, who replaced me, had been in there for a few weeks. As soon as he got to Magic Kingdom, I said, this is your office now. I'll be in the conference room down the hall. Anytime you need to talk, let me know. We'll walk the park. We'll transition. I'll tell you everything I know, and we'll go from there. And so I was walking around MO7 on this Friday, and I'd said goodbye to everybody, and I'm checking my emails, and I'm like, I can't leave. Like, there must be something else I'm supposed to do, because I can't leave. There's something else. I'm going to forget an email or not follow through on something. And I finally came to the conclusion there's nothing else to do. So I went to my office where my assistant, Kathleen, we worked together for about 14 years. And I said, I'm not giving this idea to HR. I'm giving it to you. We had a pretty emotional moment. And I got in my car and left security and went out the gate. I'm driving home. I called my wife and said, that's it. I'm out. I'm done. I've left Disney. And she said, well, I got a bottle of champagne in the fridge. Come home. We're going to have lunch, have a bottle of champagne, celebrate. I get home, and she says, what happened? And I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure we agreed I was leaving Disney. I want to make sure we didn't have a communication thing here. Like I was going to take like a sabbatical or something. She's like, you actually left permanently. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, it's all over the news and Twitter, the parade. I'm like, what about the parade? She said, the Maleficent float, its head exploded and caught on fire right on town square. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So we turned on the news and flames. No one was injured. But this has never happened. And so flames are bursting and everything, and so everything was okay. And I called Jason. I had his cell number, And so we're at home drinking champagne. I called Jason, I'm like, hey, how you doing? He's like, what do you want? I said, no, this isn't going to come up in an investigation, but just for the record, this didn't happen on my shift. So he told me a few un-Disney choice words and then hung up on me. And I talked to him afterwards for a couple times, like he needed to know where stuff was. But right after I left Disney, I don't know if I shared this last year, but one night I had this one of the Jerry Maguire nights, right? I stayed up all night and I wrote like, okay, I'm going to write down everything I know because I don't know what I know. I've been at Disney for 26 years. I don't know what I've learned. I don't know if I know anything that anyone wants to hear about. So I wrote down a bunch of concepts and I put little descriptions underneath them. And when I was done, I had all this stuff and I needed an editor. And so I called Keenan Yoho. He's the director of the executive MBA program at Rollins I'd become friends with. I said, Keenan, I'm going to send you all this stuff. If you could look at this, I don't know, proof it, edit it, just see what is there. I said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this. And within 24 hours, he sent it back to me, and he said, oh, yeah, I can see exactly what you have here. He said, you have these concepts about leading yourself, you have a bunch of concepts about leading your team, and you have a bunch of concepts about leading your organization. And that was it. And ever since then, the book that we're going to get the damn book done this summer. That's the message today. Is all about that. Leading self, leading team, leading organization. All my keynotes, my leadership workshops, everything's built around that. And before I decided to leave Disney, I called my dad. He retired 13 years ago, and he's somehow written 4 books. And we discussed it, and I said, will you kind of help me along the way here? Because I have no idea what I'm doing. And he said, absolutely. And so I probably learned in 11 or 12 months what it took him 5 years to learn. And it's really accelerated. And then you add to that Jody, who Jody gets to talk to a lot of cockerels because I'll get off a call and he'll be like, yeah, I just got off a podcast with Lee and now I got you. And so he hooked us up. And then Jody just started connecting me with lots of people. And everyone called. It was just my go-to was yes. I'll do it. I just want to get some W's on the board and know that someone wants to hear from me. And we had a great connection. I agree about the radio voice. I listen to his voice when I'm when we're doing a podcast. He's like, so Dan, smooth jazz. So it's great. And he's very encouraging because we never have a script and we just get on and start talking. And it's funny, in the podcast, whatever I say, he always says, that's extremely interesting, and here's more. And I'm like, man, I'm interesting. So he's good to build you up also. And then he introduced me to Josh, and Josh and I just finished a couple days of recording at a studio he'd rented out and putting together some things. So it has been a random journey along the way. And I got a call, I got a call before I left Disney, and it was, hey, we know a guy who knows a guy who worked for Marriott who lives in Croatia now and works at a hotel company, and we need help with organizational structure. Do you do that? And what my dad taught me is you say, that's my specialty. That's what I do. And I specialize in the Eastern European countries. So they're like, well, perfect. We're glad we found you. I'm like, so of course, then I went to internet. I'm like, so where exactly is Croatia? I mean, I know it's out there somewhere. So I found myself in Croatia 2 weeks later. And I found in my new career, I have about 30% of the information at any given time and what's going on. And I'm starting to become comfortable in that space. And it's been really hard. Because at Disney, I knew it was happening 365 days, 782 days in advance. Everything was set. I knew exactly what was happening. And now today, I have about a 90-day horizon over what's happening next. So I'm still getting used to that lack of structure. The other thing I learned, this was going to be this big adventure with my wife. I'm like, all right, Fowler and I are going to go, travel the world together. It's going to be great. And after the first 2 months, we had this moment where she's like, I know we had this vision of us liking each other, liking spending time together. She goes, but I don't like working with you, and I don't like living with you. So I'm like, me too. But since we've been married 25 years, we should probably work through this. So what I finally we came to a conclusion was, she said, all right, I'm willing. What do you want me to do? I said, I need less feedback. If you can just give me less feedback, that'd be good. And I said, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, look, here's what I'll do. You give me less feedback, and I'll follow through on more of the stuff you're telling me. How about that? And that we came to that conclusion. And so it's starting to click now. But boy, that was tough. We'd never spent that much time together since the whole time we've been married. So now I get up at 5 in the morning. I go to Starbucks and work for a while. Then she texts me. We walk the dog. And then I go off to another coffee shop somewhere and do work. And she does her thing. And we're on a good rhythm now. And it's funny because when Josh, we were filming in the morning, I nailed it. I was just like riffing and talking and doing these videos and everything. I was killing it. Then she showed up. She sits down in the back, and after lunch, she's sitting back there, and I start the video. I'm like, leadership's important. It's, it's really, you really need to be a leader. I'm like, all right, cut. I'm like, Valerie, we're getting along well now, and I love you, but you have to leave. So she sat out in the waiting room. I'm like, all right, come up with a bunch of questions. We'll try this again later. And she left, and I got back in the rhythm and did my thing. And then in the afternoon, she asked me questions off camera, and it got good again. So that's been a fun adventure. And I've had a few moments along the way where I've said, you know what? I've had these moments where I said, if nothing else went well, this moment was worth everything of going and doing this and leaving Disney and trying some new adventure. And the first one was back in last June. I'd been gone for 5 weeks, and I got booked to go speak to Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals, which, do you speak to pharmaceutical companies about leadership? That's all I do. It's really all I do. So I was in, and they said, well, we need you to come to Denver and come to north of Denver, near Boulder, to do this conference. And they said, and tell us how many nights you need at the hotel. I said, I don't need any nights at the hotel because I'm going to go stay with my daughter who goes to University of Colorado Boulder. And they're like, you don't want, it's a really nice hotel. I'm like, if my daughter's not there, it really doesn't matter. So I spent a week out with my daughter, hanging out with her, doing the speech. I'm like, all right, if nothing else goes right, this was the moment where I got to just hang out in Denver with my daughter for a week. And then 22 hours ago, I was in Cordoba, Argentina, in a brewery, tasting beer out of a vat that holds like 40,000 gallons, and they had a little spigot. We're tasting with the guy who owns the place. I'm like, if nothing else goes right for the rest of my life, it was worth this moment being in Argentina, drinking beer with my wife who hates beer, but was having a great time in that moment with this Argentinian guy, and we're just drinking beer before we went to the airport. So you have these moments that are just this kind of, for me, surreal, because after being in such a structured place for so long and executing the plan every day, and I've been reading a ton. So I went through, as Terry mentioned, and just want to share with you just some things I learned along the way. So one thing I learned when I left was I got a style guide. So I got someone from who works in marketing at Disney, who freelances. I said, I'm not sure what it looks like, but I know I need a style guide to be consistent. And they said, wow, the ops guy listened a little bit to the marketing people. So yeah, you do need a style guide. So I came up with my rooster. And some would call it a cockerel, if you really see the irony there. And teach, counsel, inspire is kind of how I talk about what I do now. So the green stars is where I got to go travel over the past 365 days and do speeches and conferences and work. And the yellows are this is our target area. I feel like I'm playing Risk. Like I want to go into Australia. So we're actually going to go to Japan in September. We kind of did it in reverse. We're going to go see the Rugby World Cup and see some matches over there. It's being held in 5 different cities in Japan. And then once we booked it, my wife said, now go get a gig so we don't have to pay for the trip. So I'm still working on it. I don't have a lot of contacts in Japan. And we were in Miami a few weeks ago at the Moroccan Tourism Board. We're doing a conference in Miami. So we went down there and got some cards, and we'll see if Morocco wants to hire us. And then the UK and Mexico are something we want to do this coming year. So I think one of the things, what I learned at Disney, you don't know what you've learned where you are until you leave a lot of times. There's just this, it's funny how this kind of stuff works. So what I realized I learned at Disney after I left Disney that's really kind of surprised me, number one is persistence counts. At Disney, you had to be persistent. And actually, when I talked to these kids, when we were in Argentina, we talked to at a junior achievement conference. There's kids, about 400 kids from all over South America that go to Argentina once a year for this conference, and I spoke to them. And what I've learned now is if I can spend time a day before my speech and talk to a bunch of people, my speech can be different every single time based on the audience. Because that's what I learned at Disney. Listen to your customers, you listen to your guests, find out what they want, and give them what they want. And so my wife and I got there a day early, so we spent a bunch of time talking to the kids about what they were thinking about and what their careers are going to be and what the pressures they had. So by the next day, I had this whole concept of a speech written for the group. And I came up with 3 things, which are very, they overlap with a lot of things at Disney. And the first one has to do with persistence. I told the group, attitude is everything. I said, you choose every single day, you choose to be happy, you choose to be sad, you choose to be frustrated, you choose to be confused. Whatever you choose to be is what you choose to be. And when I told the students that, they didn't really get that. They're like, no, people make me mad sometimes. I'm like, no one makes you mad. You choose to be mad if you decide to do that. And so I've been doing a ton of thinking and reading about emotional intelligence and mindset. And I was really into this before I left Disney, but now even more. Any moment you are anywhere, you choose in your mind. You should have total control over your feelings and how that goes. Now, you're going to have times when it's overwhelming, but most of the time, you can decide to have a great day every single day if you choose to. And so I told them attitude is a lot of that, so never be a victim. I also told them that this idea of attitude is people who have great attitudes, what is it about them? Because we hire people like that at Disney. And they're people who overcome obstacles and they overcome barriers. They go over, they go around, they go through, they just figure out a way. And we've been doing a lot of consulting, my wife and I, on hiring and recruiting and hiring. And one of the concepts is you hire for attitude. Because you can't teach attitude, but once you hire people that can show you and give you stories about how they overcame obstacles, went through obstacles, were able to overcome barriers in their life or in situations, it means that they're just going to keep doing that over and over again. And not everyone's wired that way. And so I really got into them, this idea that attitude is extremely important. It's the people. So Disney, it was the people, 12,000 cast members at Magic Kingdom. I talked to very few guests. They talked to all the guests. And every company I talk to now, it's about the people. When I talk to executives, I'm like, have you ever spent time in your call center? Have you ever spent time working in your operation? That's like second nature, Disney. We all spend so much time in the operation because we know how important it is to deliver that experience. A lot of these companies, this is like gospel. I'm like, here's an idea. Go to the cafeteria in your company by yourself and just buy lunch and then go sit with an employee and talk to them. They're like, wow, this is, I can't believe they think this is like a really good concept. So like you said before, the stuff you think is second nature to you, it is new to somebody else, I'll tell you. It's incredible how that works. And I found in my keynotes, I talked to my dad a couple times, I said, I do feel like an imposter sometimes. I get up and I'm telling people exactly, nothing I've told people is ever new. I'm like, they've read all the books, seen the videos, they know these things pay attention to your people, give feedback, recognize performance, set clear expectations. I find myself giving speeches to be paid to tell people that, and then I come out of that, I'm like, are they going to come back and say, we want our money back because we already knew all that? And what I've discovered is, it's not about the information you're giving, it's the storytelling, and there's only certain people in the audience who are ready to listen to you. So this idea that you're going to go into an audience and give a speech and change everyone's lives, that doesn't happen. But there's going to be a couple people, you're going to catch them at a moment in their career or their life that they're ready to listen. You have the right credibility. You have the voice they're willing to listen to at that moment, and it gets through. And you get those notes from people. I'll talk to 1,000 people. You may get 1 or 2 people that write, that was incredible. I thought you were talking to me. And everyone else is like, yeah, it was fun. The Disney guy came. So I think this idea is you can't like do this incredible job every time, but you're going to touch someone because not only are you willing to tell the story, but they're willing to listen at that point. And I've seen that with our kids. They're all of a sudden one day, they're like, as we all hear about that, your parents, my wife and I were really dumb for a while, and all of a sudden our oldest is like, man, you guys are really wise. I guess we changed a lot in the past 5 years, but he's willing to listen now. Consistency is a big deal. Once again, I'm finding in outside companies, when you start talking about, we want Disney magic. We want to create magic in what we're doing. How do you do that? And you say, well, are you willing and ready to do a whole bunch of work to simplify your business and just hone in and just talk about these very simple concepts over and over and over again. And a lot of them say, probably not, but come anyway. And then we get there and we say, okay, how do you make sure all your employees are greeting every customer in that experience every single day? And as my wife has come up with this great saying, don't confuse simple with easy. And that we find ourselves telling them all the time. Everything we're going to tell you are simple concepts. They are by no means easy to implement. And so what is the standard? When someone walks into your hotel, someone calls your pharmaceutical company, someone goes to your hospital, how do you greet the people coming in? And they say, what do you mean? Well, what do you say? Well, people say whatever they say. I said, exactly, that's the problem. They say whatever they say. A lot of times they don't say anything. Have you made that a standard? How many seconds does it take for you to answer the phone? How many rings? Well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, how many rings? 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, 10 rings? What's your standard? Well, we don't know what that is. Well, there's a starting point for you. And so what we're finding is we just introduce them to this concept because so many companies just don't have standards. They don't know what they want to do. They just go out every day and just trying to figure this stuff out. And it is the boring part of business, but boy, it's the one that delivers because I'm a big fan of Starbucks. I was in Starbucks in Buenos Aires 2 days ago. It had the wood floors and the displays, and I recognized I ordered the coffee the same way, and it tasted the same way, and the music was the same. It just was comfortable, and that's what consistency does. It creates comfort for people. We know standards. I just talked about that. Nobody makes it alone. Boy, Disney, no one made it alone, and now that I'm on the outside world, I really feel that because I don't have this army of people around me to help me be successful at what I do. There's Valerie and I and our dog. And I even work for the dog. I'm in the middle of a podcast, and she's clawing at the window to go out. I let her out. 5 minutes later, she's barking to come in. I'm like, make up your mind. I didn't know it was going to be this big a deal with a dog either. But nobody makes it alone. And I've seen that with everyone I've talked to. All the people Jody introduced me to and working with Josh and connecting is people have been so generous with their time and their and I think Karen made a great point is you have to give a ton and knowing that it's all going to come back to you tenfold, somehow or another. And I found that plays over and over and over again. 2 years ago, my wife, her cousin Isabel, who's from France, her first cousin, and Jean-Pierre called us. And we're really good friends with them. We've traveled all over the world with them. And they said, we'd like to come move in with you for a year in Orlando and take English classes and try to start a new company. He's an entrepreneur. And there's not a lot of people I'd like to move in with me for a year, but there are a couple of them that were great. They were very low maintenance guests. So they stayed with us for a year. Jean-Pierre goes to Stetson University. He's taking English classes. He meets Luis. Luis is from Brazil and sells real estate in Kissimmee to people from Brazil. Luis comes over for a barbecue. Jean-Pierre's like, can I have my friends over to come play? We're like, all right, we'll get the keg. We'll come on over. So all these people from all these different countries at our house, we're barbecuing. I'm meeting Luis. And it's like, it's funny because when you're spending all this time with everyone's learning English, by the end of the night, I'm like, I don't even know if anyone exchanged a full idea the whole night. Everyone's trying to get out what they can in English in their own language, but boy, it was a lot of fun. And 6 months later, my WhatsApp, which now it rings, and I'm like, I answer it. It's like in this Brazilian accent, Dan, how are you? I'm like, good. It's Felipe. Hey, Felipe, what's going on? Well, I'm friends with Luis. Oh, good. It's 6 months later. Who's Luis? Oh, Luis is the guy who knows the French guy that lived with you. Oh, Jean-Pierre. Okay, what's going on? Well, he told us about you love Disney, and we're having a leadership conference, and we want you to come be a speaker. And I'm like, okay. And so we just we made our way through it. 2 months later, I'm in Campo Grande, Brazil, and they wired me the money beforehand. Everyone told me, get the money in the bank before you go. And so 24 hours before I didn't have the money, I call them like, look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but if I don't have that money in my bank account, I'm not getting on the plane. And the money came. And then when the money came, I told my wife, I said, this is either our fee or our ransom. So make sure it's available because I trust Luis. And Felipe sounds like a good guy, but this could be a trap. But we got to say yes. So I went down there, and it was great. And we're going to do, and actually the video series I just did, we're going to release it, start with in Brazil, subtitled, and see how that works and go from there. And once again, with these surreal moments, I got to Brazil, and I called Valerie that night, and she goes, well, how's it going? you think it's going to be a good conference? I said, well, I think it is, because when I was at the airport at the baggage carousel, 3 people wanted to take their picture with me, and I left the airport. I saw 5 billboards with my face on it. So I'm like, this is awesome. I love Brazil. And so then I had to call her back the next day and say, look, I know you're not big into social media, but there's a really good chance you're going to see me taking a selfie with a scantily clad Brazilian girl. And not just one girl, like lots of girls, because they're into Instagram and social media, and it's all about the selfie. And I said, I just want to let you know that, because I feel really guilty right now taking all these pictures. She's like, all right, as long as you let me know in advance, we're good. So we'll see what happens there. And this overlap. If you don't love it, change it. And once again, I think that's what I found. 19 jobs over 26 years at Disney. It was incredible. And there's no way I could do what I'm doing today if I hadn't done that. But you get to a point where you got to love it. And there's a point where, and you were talking about entrepreneurs, they want control. I wanted more control over my life. And I wanted more control over what I was doing. And I knew at Disney, everything, you trade off everything. You sacrifice everything back and forth. And I decided that was the path we're going to take. We're going to have the freedom now to do what we want to do, where we want to do it. And I told Valerie, I said, there is a 99.99% chance I'm never going to make that much money again I was making at Disney. But we're going to have enough money to do what we do, and we're going to travel, and we're going to do what we want. She's like, I'm all in. And I said, all right, well, what if it doesn't work out? She said, well, I guess you're just going to have to get a job. I'm like, you're pretty nonchalant about this. I'm like, I should be more nervous, and you seem to be. I'm like, I don't want a job. She's like, well, then make it work. And so, and we did. So we were in Buenos Aires. We were in a $50 Airbnb 2-bedroom apartment. If you want to go and have a great time, go to Buenos Aires, because the dollar is like worth a lot of money down there. And it's a really cool place. So what I learned after Disney, I learned that I know a lot. I do know a lot about a lot of things, which is great. And I keep sharing that with people. And the 26 years of experience I got working internationally and working at Disney and all the things I've learned is great. And the other thing is I know very little. And I'm learning that also about the more I travel and the more I see in the world, I'm like, what? I didn't know this was going on out here. There's like a lot of stuff going on outside of Disney, believe it or not. And it's funny, they just, I saw the thing in the paper last month. They changed the policy on smoking. And I know how big a deal that is. Like, when I left, we weren't even talking about that. So that happened. I called someone I know. I go, that was a fast decision. They said, oh, we're getting overrun by letters, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. And the stroller policy now, man, we're getting a mountain of. And I'm like, it's funny. It was a blip in the Orlando Sentinel for me. I'm like, when you're in the middle of the belly of the beast, everything, that seems like a big deal. When you get outside, you're like, oh, they changed the stroller policy. Big deal. So anyway, I know a lot, I know little. And depending on what day it is, I'm there. People are awesome, and that's the big thing. We spent time in Croatia with people and just meeting incredibly interesting people and their backgrounds, and going to Brazil and meeting these kids, and being in Argentina and going out west. I mean, it's incredible the kind of entrepreneurial things that are happening out there, and the fact that people are just creating these networks. And I'm still getting used to the fact, because people say, are you going to grow your company? I'm like, there will be no growing of the company. We want simplicity also. So every Sunday night, my wife says, all right, Tristan and I, pick 2 things that you're getting rid of this week and put it on the curb. And I'm a hoarder. Like, I have a piece of my senior year float from high school in the garage. It's like, it's traveled around the world with us. She's like, what? How does that piece of wood? We've thrown that away 5 times. I'm like, I don't know. But man, those were glory days. That was the days, And so now I've learned I can now get rid of stuff, but I take a picture of it. So I have a whole folder of pictures of things. I'm like, I remember that T-shirt. I went to that concert, and there was that girl, and she doesn't know all that story, but I got pictures of stuff that reminds me of that. But we are simplifying. But anyway, I don't know how I got there from People Are Awesome, but it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned to say yes to everything. People call me. I've not turned down anyone yet. People email me. There was a girl in Brazil. She wants to be a biomed engineer, and that's what our son is doing. And I told her, she's 16, and she was so sharp. And I gave her my card, and she says, well, if I email you, how are you going to see it? And I said, well, I log in, I get my emails, and I read them. She said, but you read them? I said, well, yeah. She goes, you read your own emails, and then you respond. And I said, yeah. So she says, so if I get an email from you, it's from you. I'm like, yeah. What do you? In her mind, it was just like there was this like army of people like responding on behalf of me. But it's funny how people just have these conceptions of how things are. And so I'm finding now the ability. Now, yeah, we want to travel and do stuff and make some money, but the ability we have to share people with what we did and impart on them some wisdom we have has been really cool. And it's funny because Valerie's fluent in Spanish. She lived in Mexico for about 9 months after she worked at Disney. So we get to Argentina, and I'm kind of trying to get through very broken Spanish as I'm talking to people. So I'm like, all right, it's time to unleash Valerie. So I introduce her, and like she ramps up and speaking Spanish to everyone, and I'm like, all right, that's how we roll. Let's see how she speaks the language. So it's definitely a partnership. Free enterprise is alive and well in the USA. I see what you all are doing. I meet people. They're selling stuff. I have these. My pen I got designed, and I'll leave a bunch of these behind for you all. But it's I was at Give Kids the World. My dad and I were doing a fundraising speech there, and afterwards, this family came up and talked to us and said they designed pen carrying cases and they designed pins, and they just wanted to meet us and take a picture. And I said, well, I've been thinking about designing a pin. Do you all do that? And they said, yes, we do. So I gave them my card. They emailed me. I sent them my style guide with my the rooster and everything. And 6 weeks later, they come to my house to deliver the 500 pins. The president of the company is 16 years old, Alex, and his vice presidents are Julia and Sydney, his 11 and 9-year-old sisters. And last year, they made $250,000 in revenue selling pins and pin carrying cases because people at Disney who do pin trading said, we don't like the design because you put the pin in, there's no back, and we had to put the cardboard in there. So they just said, we see a problem. They redesigned it. They know a guy, they have a factory in China now they work with, and their dad is helping them figure this out as they go. And they're going to grow this business continually. And I've sent them like 8 or 10 people. Because I'm like, if you want to buy a pin, do you want to buy it from a company or Alex, Julia, and Sydney? So anyway, it's incredible that what's going on now. Nobody makes it alone. That's still the case, and now I'm outside. Technology is super cool. Jody has introduced me, and every time I interact with people, I learn new technology. Calendly, people are like, I want to meet with you. I'm like, just go on this link and schedule something. Also, because what I found is when you lose resources, you become very resourceful. I don't have an assistant anymore, so I got to figure out how to do this stuff. And we get on Zoom and we do our podcasts, and I can talk to anyone in the world. And I know you all have done this. I've done conference calls and podcasts out on ski lifts, on lobbies of hotels and airports, in my daughter's room. I mean, wherever it takes. But technology now allows you to do everything. And then lastly, this has been the big one for me: is family is the constant. I've really learned a lot about that because Valerie and I are spending a lot more time together. We're seeing my parents a lot more. The kids are dispersed all over the place, and we're connecting with them. But 2 months ago, we were at the Boardwalk Hotel, and I was meeting a guy, Brian Britton, who used to work for Disney, who's a good friend of mine, and he left and is now running a company up in Michigan. And he was at the hotel, and he met with the general manager of the Boardwalk. And so afterwards, the GM of the Boardwalk went to Flying Fish and told the manager there, look, Brian Britton and Dan Cockerell are here with a group. So just make it work, make sure everything goes really smoothly. And the manager's like, I'm all over it, we'll make it happen. Who are they? So people forget quickly. So when you see, and I looked in the newspaper the day after I left Magic Kingdom, I'm like, all right, I bet they didn't open today because I left. I'm like, I went to page 18. I called. I'm like, did Magic Kingdom open today? They're like, yes. I'm like, oh, crap. I guess I wasn't the key guy there. So anyway, family is the constant. And your family and friends, that's over time. Those are the people that are going to be with you your whole life along the way. I talked about this: lead self, lead team, lead organization. These are my this is my rallying piece where I kind of hone in on everything. I'm a huge believer, and I've become an even bigger believer in that. Before you can do anything else with your team, your family, anyone, you have to take care of yourself. Fitness, health, diet, mindset, emotional intelligence, time management. Anything you can do to take the stress off yourself is going to allow you to perform better as a dad, as a spouse, as a son, as a daughter, as a coworker, as a boss, as an employee, and then everything goes from there. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to get better. That's something that's really hit me now. I just turned 50 in February, and my wife and I, we feel like we just got out of college and we're just starting all over again, except this time we got some money and we're a heck of a lot smarter than we were when we got out of college. This guy in Croatia, the owner of this hotel company, he created 25 years. He's grown it. It's 12 hotels now, a huge resort. They make chocolate. They do all kinds of stuff. And they just opened another hotel in Zagreb. He's 73 years old. And when I was talking to him, he's one of the few people that doesn't speak English. The new generation there is fluent in English, but he grew up not speaking English, and so they're always translating. And he basically sounded like Doc Holliday from Tombstone, because the translation was, "I'm in my prime." I thought that was great. He's 73 years old. He's like, "I'm in my prime. I got resources, I got wisdom, and I got the drive, and I'm having a ball right now." So just to see these people as the examples are incredible. And then this is something I found online I use a lot, is this idea of tiny gains. And mathematically, for you math people, if you get 1% better every day, you'll be 37% better at the end of 365 days. And if you get 1% worse every day, you'll be 3% worse off at the end of the year. So what I'm finding in my new life is it's not about these huge gains, like kind of cruise along for a month and then really work hard. I'm finding every single day you got to get up and do something along the way. And sometimes it's writing a newsletter or writing a book, and just have the discipline to go work on a little bit of a time. And when my wife and I left Croatia, after being there for a week and covering lots of topics with them, we said, "What do you remember? What do you remember from the time here?" And they remember two things. Out of all the stuff we talked about, they remember two things. One was, don't confuse simple with easy. And other one was just came up when I was talking to the group, is how do you eat an elephant? I don't want to eat your flying elephants, but, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And they remember that, and they know, and that kind of had a good expectation. So when I get up every morning, it's like, all right, I'm going to take a little bite out of this elephant and do a little bit and work along the way. Good is the enemy of great, which is another one I'm realizing. It's easy to go out and do a good job every day. It's really hard to do a great job every day, and it's easy to settle. It is so easy to settle at good and not go to great. And I've adopted a bunch of people who give me good peer pressure. Jody will call, "We need to do podcasts. We need to get on here. What are we doing next?" And I'm like, "Give me a break, man." And my wife's like, "What are you doing next?" I'm like, everyone just calm down. But then I'm like, no, this is good. You got to be pushed. You got to be pushed to be great. And the last thing I'll leave with you. So if you're not on my article of the week list, I curate articles, and every Friday I send those out. And we came up, this is something Jody and I figured out along the way. So I said, you know what, you can go to my website and register for this article, but it seems like just getting people past that little step is even harder. So what I found now with, it's lead digits, right, Jody? Is you can get a text number and get a word and engage people. And we've seen the engagement after my speeches go up by every time I do a speech, he'll call, "Did you give a speech yesterday?" Because I got a bunch of inputs of this. So if you text Dan, article of the week, Dan AOW to 44222, you can sign up for the article of the week. And then we're on, how many episodes have we done now, Jody, on the podcast? 35. So we've gotten past the magical 7 number that some people don't get past, right? And so we're moving forward from there. And that's it. And I know we're run along. If there's one or two questions, and I know everyone wants to take a break and maybe get some of that coffee and cookies or anything. So anything I can talk about or answer for y'all? Yes. Ball.
There's questions.
Coming at you.
So press the button? No? Just speak into it? Okay. Hi, Dan. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, so kids are getting to college much like your kids. So what do you see moving forward in the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, what advice would you give kids to? Is it all about areas of study? Is it about human, skill sets? What do you see?
I love that question, because I don't think I would have had a point of view a year ago.
Yeah.
I would have said, well, I was a political science major. Yeah. I know that today I could tell people it's probably not a great path to take. And then half the people say, well, why do you say that, Dan? Who are you to decide on that? Right. But my mindset now and how I've seen my kids are so different. So one, our oldest has taken the path, and he was an engineering major, and how he works for a biomed company in Boston. And he's like a really, really smart kid. He's wired that way. and his maturity has come along, and he met this girl that straightened him out now. So he's got the runway is limitless for him, and he's having a ball. And the more he gets challenged, the more he does, because he just can integrate that kind of stuff. So I think anything around STEM, and computers, math, science, engineering, that's just a reality. Is if that's a path that you can take, it's a great one to take, because you're going to have unlimitless opportunities moving forward, because it's about math and science, and that's the way the world's going in that direction. But not everyone's wired that way. Our 18-year-old, every time I look at this kid, he drives up in the car, and I'm like, "Are you driving already?" It's like, "Well, he's 18." I'm like, "He's the baby," He's going to end up. I don't know what he's going to end up doing. That's my boy. He's got no plan, and he goes by the seat of his pants, and hopefully he'll figure out not to procrastinate in the future. And I don't know where he's going to end up. It could be anywhere, but he's going to have a great time. My dad always says he's going to be the happiest in his life, because he's just he's got no fear, and he'll just kind of go and do. And I get calls from him sometimes. "What time are you getting home?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I haven't seen you a couple days. Where have you been?" I'm like, "I've been in Spain for a week." He's like, "Oh, I thought I heard you downstairs." I'm like, "Yeah, come back to our planet, Tristan." And then there's Margot, and Margot is she's a girl, so she's organized, responsible. As I tell my wife, I'm like, she's perfect. She's like, "That is not true. You're a dad, and you probably think that." Yeah. What I see for her is I want to steer her in the direction of entrepreneurship, because I'd never had that point of view for 26 years. In the past year, boy, there are so many opportunities. I already have 3 business opportunities I think she could run with. This guy in Argentina, he wants to import his beer. So last night I'm Googling, how do I import beer? And then how do I get my daughter to import beer? I'm like, oh crap, we can't do it till August because she's not 21 yet. Yeah. But there's all these other connections, and so in my opinion, there's this whole rigid go to college because you need to learn something, because you can't just sort of not go to college and start designing bridges or start operating on people. There's an education you actually have to get. And then there's other path that says, maybe you get the education. College may not be the route, because entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter. No one cares what degree you have. It's about, can you figure it out and get it done and figure out connections and create and not have fear and go in that direction. So for our kids, I see those, in my opinion, for kids, those are the 2 paths now. This idea of going to college and getting the communication degree, because you have to have the prerequisite of the college degree to get to the next job, that path doesn't seem as good a path anymore. And a year ago, I probably would have said it was fine, but in my opinion now, it's either go out and create real value of real knowledge you have, or go out and be an entrepreneur and connect the dots. And it doesn't mean you're not going to go to college, but there's lots of ways to learn how to do that. So I think that's the way to think about it. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. All right, one more, and I think we'll take the break here. Anyone else? All right. I hope you all have a good weekend and enjoy the thing. And Terry, thanks for letting me come back and talk to everyone and share what's going on, and hope to hear from you.